Hello everyone, welcome to the solution part of the quant quiz that we just did on the ratios, fractions, and min-max. Like it was a good mix of different type of questions, and these are the questions which some to a certain category, but it gives students a lot of trouble sometimes. So it's really helps if you understand the right method, the best method to solve this question. So we'll focus on all of that. So first of all, I would like to congratulate people. Just give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, that is what. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate Faizan, Suyash, Rachita, Nivedita, and Rishika, the top 5 people in the quiz. Kudos to you. Did really great job, and all others who also participated. Again, this is just the result. There's a possibility you might have participated in just 4 or 5 questions, but great job to the top 5 people. And you're gonna learn a lot about how to solve these questions better, more methodically, more structurally, more logically, and a lot of other things which can help you. Okay, so a quick introduction about myself. That's what I usually start with always. So a quick intro about myself. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Piyush Beriwala. I'm gonna be the host of this solution part of the session. I have around 11 years of experience mentoring people targeting top B schools globally. Like, think of any top B school in the world. I've definitely sent people, multiple people to that school over the last 11 years. I have myself been a student, prepared for both CAT and GMAT, and taught for both the tests as well. I scored a 740 on GMAT Classic and 99.9 percentile on the CAT. And personally, I love analyzing trends and coming up with strategies using data, trends, and all of that. So that's what is quick intro about myself. I've been doing this for last 11 years. I generally help people with their quant and data insights part. I'm one of the co-founders of GMAT Viz. Yeah, so that's just about me. So let's get into the first question itself. Now, this was a slightly straightforward question, but if you do not focus on the nitty-gritties of this, there's a possibility of a small error in this question as well, because you might as well pick 14 as the answer instead of 30. But let's see. So it says at least two-third means minimum two-third, right? Remember that. At least is very important. Two-third of the 40 members of a committee. Now, two-third of 40 members of a committee must vote in favor for a resolution to pass. Now, this number, if I calculate, this will turn out to be 26 point something. So if it's saying at least these many should of the members should vote, that means the minimum number has to be 27, because the number of members should not be cannot be fractional. I need to have an absolute real number, like which is a integer. So at least 27 people should vote in favor. It could be 27 or more, right? What that means is that the number of people voting against the resolution is gonna be 40 minus 27, 13 or lesser, right? Because the maximum number that can basically go against is 30. It can't be more than that, because in favor has to be 27. Now, guys, just a disclaimer. I'm not reading the question completely. I'm assuming all of you who are in the solution part, you have already gone through the question and solved it. Okay. If you have not done that, you can always pause the video, go back and solve the question first, and then come back, because it's important for you to have solved the question to understand the solution completely. Because I'm assuming that you have read the question completely and you have tried it out. Okay. So I know that 13 or lesser is the number voting against it. So what is the greatest number of people? It is asking for the greatest number of people. It has to be 13. So my answer in this case is 13. Okay, guys. So straightforward question, not too complicated if you focus on the word at least. If you don't focus on the word at least, and you think two-third is around 26 point something, 26, then against can be 14, then you are going for the error. That's a trap that the question has set for you in case you have not realized that. Okay. So I think just the audio is fine, I guess, all of you. The video should be okay. If it's lagging, just check Sid if it is your internet or not, because mine is right now fine, at least I hope so, and I'm on a 200 Mbps connection, so should be fine. Okay, now let's go to the next question with that. Now, this is an interesting question. Now, most of the times when people see something this big, right, like they get super intimidated, because everyone thinks that, okay, you know what, I have just 2 minutes to answer a question in the GMAT. How do I read such a long question? Now, that's another trap, or let's say what GMAT is trying to play on students' mind. They give lengthier questions, but in reality, the questions are straightforward. They're not complicated. Some of them are. I'm not saying all of them are not, but yes, you should not judge a book by its cover. If it's a long question, you need to think that there's decent amount of information available. So possibly you don't have to do a lot more assumption or something. It's most likely going to be slightly simpler to deal with. That's how I look at it. Like, for the lack of anything else, that's the optimistic side of me. I don't want to sit in the test and be intimidated by a question. I would want to tackle it heads on with a positive mindset. So that's what I would recommend all of you to do. Okay, and that's what I recommend my students to do, that you should not tackle anything with a negative mindset. So let's get started. Okay, so at a charity gala, each invited guest belong to exactly one of the 6 groups. Okay, so I have this habit. I will just write the things down. What are the groups? Donors, press, volunteers, entertainers, organizers, or sponsors. Now, among the invited guests, 4/7 were donors, 1/5 were press, and the remainder were divided equally among the other 4 people. Now, many of you would be tempted to take variables to solve this question. Now, I always tell my students that all word problem basic questions, word problem basic is basically anything related to ratios, percentage, profit and loss, these type of questions, which are not really complicated word problems, just general word problems. You should try and relate to real life. Try and take numbers to solve. If you try and take numbers to solve, your life will be super easy. So what I would see is that in both the cases, donors and press, on the denominator, I have 7 and 5. Now, what I should do in that case is, let me assume the total number of people to be something which is a multiple of 7 and 5 both, which is 35. Okay. Now, disclaimer, obviously, I'm not teaching this number assuming method right now. I'm just showing you how to apply this. So when I work with my students, I generally teach them, we sit, we discuss this, learn this in a systematic fashion. So obviously, I'll not be able to teach that, but I'm trying my best to still teach as much as possible in this short time that I have with you today. Okay, but let's understand this. So 7 and 5 are the denominators. If I take a number which is a multiple of both, when I divide that number by 7, it will yield an integer. Now, why integers matter? Because if you have integers, your brain works faster. The math is faster. So first thing is, number of donors is 4/7 of 35. Now, I do my rough work in a separate place. So I'll write 4/7 of 35. I'll just quickly calculate that. That is 20. So number of donors is 20. 1/5 for press. 1/5 is easy to calculate. So press is 7. 1/5 of 35 is 7. And then 27 people are gone out of 35. So 8 are remaining. Now, all of them are equal. So all of them are 2 each. Now, please understand, by no means these are absolute numbers. I don't know whether there are 20 people who are donors or not. All I know is that the number of people who are invited are in this ratio. Okay, this is the invited. Okay, these are in this ratio. What that means is, it could be 10 times of these numbers. All of these numbers could be 10 times. Like, I could have 20, instead of 20 donors, 200 donors, 70 press people, and so on. Okay, I could have a multiple which is twice of this or 4 times of this, whatever. But they're definitely in the same ratio. That's something which I know. That's the basic understanding when you're assuming numbers. Keep that in mind. Okay. Now, the second thing which is given to me is that, however, twice as many press guests arrived as were invited. So there's a difference between who were invited and arrived. So I know twice as many press were turned up or arrived. So it's going to be 14. Only half the volunteers attended, invited volunteers. Volunteers were 2, so only half attempted means 1 attended. Entertainers did not attend, so there's 0 entertainer. Donors, organizers, and sponsors were as expected. So donors were 20, organizers were 2, sponsors were 2. Now, if I add all of this up, 20 plus the 14 plus 1 is 35 and 39. So total is 39 now, right? That is the arrived quantum. Okay, that's the number of people who arrived. Now it says donors, organizers, and sponsored. So, sorry, what fraction of the actual attendees were donors? Actual attendees. Total is 39. How many of it were donors? So, 20 by 39. All right, guys. So, very straightforward question if you actually work with numbers. Now, when you guys were doing this, I was noticing hardly any one of you got this wrong. But you took too long to solve this question. But if you solve it using the method that I have shown you just now, it will be a minute and a half long question for you max. Maximum 2 minutes, even including the reading part and everything. Now, obviously, when I was solving this, I had to teach you everything, how to do, and also I was being slow. When you know this process and you have used this process enough on a different set of questions, you will automatically be able to do this properly. Okay, in 1 to 1.5 2. Again, totally depends on how comfortable you are with this process. Okay, and there are at least 4 to 5 questions on GMAT which are which are very basic word problems, which actually can be really tricky for you. In fact, most people get stuck in these questions just because they take variables to solve. Okay, so please mark my words, this is going to be some of the most important areas of focus if you really want to score high on the test. Okay, now let's go to question number 3. Now this question, most of you got it right. I didn't see many of you getting this wrong. Most of you got the answer as D, which is the correct answer. But this is a very logical question. Like, again, you can solve it using math, but logic is much easier. It says 4 cups of milk are to be poured into 2 bottles. One is 2-cup bottle and the other one is a 4-cup bottle. It's just double of it, right? 2-cup bottle, 4-cup bottle. Now, if each bottle is to be filled to the same fraction of its capacity. Now, if I want to fill both the bottles to its brim, the 2-cup bottle will hold half the amount of like milk compared to the 4-cup bottle, right? That's very obvious. And even if I want to fill them at half their individual levels, still the 4-cup bottle will always hold twice the amount of volume of the 2-cup bottle, right? So I know that what they are trying to do is they are trying to fill this bottles. They are trying to fill this bottle in terms of absolute liters of milk or quantity of milk. The volume of milk in these bottles is going to be 1:2. So the question reduces to simply saying, how do I split 4 cups of milk in the ratio 1:2? And they're asking me for the volume in the 4-cup bottle. So very simple. The total is 3. So 4-cup bottle will be 2/3 of total. So 2/3 of 4 cups is 8 by 3 cups. And that is what my answer is. So if you focus on logical solving, this will be again another easy question for you. Okay, let's move ahead then to question number 4. This is the first DS question that we are going to do today. Now, looks very simple. Most of you took decent amount of time to solve this. Some of you got it right. Some of you got this wrong as well. The correct answer is B, but we'll come to that. Now, the big thing with this question is, like, this points out a very important aspect of DS, which is don't never ever cut corners on the question stem itself. Okay, reading the question stem is very important. Pre-analysis is very important. Okay, let's understand this. So this says 3 business partners shared all proceeds from the sale of their privately held company. Okay, so they completely shared the proceeds amongst themselves, all 3 of them. Okay, if the partner with the largest share received exactly 5/8 of the total proceeds. So what I can say is, if the total proceeds was 8, then the first partner with the largest share, largest partner, let's say, who received the largest share, got 5 out of it. That means for the other 2, like the second partner and the third partner, the combined was 3, right? The combined they got was 3. Now it says how much money did the partner, the smallest share, receive? So I need to know the money, but it's not ratio. I don't need the fraction. The fraction won't do. I need to know the exact money, which is basically the dollar amount to solve the question. Now, I don't have any dollar amount. I don't know how much money they made by selling the company. So the question has to give me that information. The statement has to give me that information. With that, keep that in mind when you go to the statements. Otherwise, you might pick D as the correct answer in this case, which will be wrong. Now, let's go to statement 1. Now, statement 1 tells me the partner with the smallest share received 1/5 of the amount received by the partner with the second largest share. So if I look at statement 1, I can at best get the ratio of to second and third partner. Now I'm writing X is to Y here. Like, if you want to be very precise, you can always write 5:1 because the smallest partner is getting 1/5 of the share. Now I can use this information and find the ratio of all 3 people, but still I will not be able to find the dollar amount in terms of what he actually ended up receiving. So since I can't get the dollar amount, statement 1 won't be sufficient to answer the question. So I'll just rub away statement 1 from here. It doesn't give me the dollar amount, and that is good enough for me to eliminate the statement for now. Let's go to statement 2. Now, in statement 2, it says that the partner with the largest share received from the sale exactly half of the $2 million received by the partner with the largest share. So if I know that this guy received $2 million and the second partner received half of it, then he received $1 million. Correct? I have the dollar amount as well. Now, if he received half of it, in terms of ratios, this is going to be 2.5. Correct? And this guy then should have received 0.5 share out of 8 shares, right? You can write 0.5 by 8. And I know 5 shares is equal to 2 million. So I can say 5K, I can convert all this into real numbers by taking K as the common ratio. Right? That's what we do. When we need to convert a ratio to a real number, we just assume a common ratio to be a variable. So I know 5K is 2 million. So can I find the share of the smallest partner, which is 0.5K? Yes, I can. Like, do you need to find it? You don't need to find it. You don't need to do the math. I'm just showing you that the math can be done. So the idea is you should go to a point in data sufficiency where you think after this step, there are going to be two, three steps which will give me the answer. And you can stop at that stage. Like, again, obviously you can say, Piyush, it's 0.2 million, how much effort it is. But yes, I'm not talking about this particular question. Any other question? If you're 100% confident, and what is important, please, guys, a lot of people comment and say you should not do guesswork in DS. I'm not recommending you to do guesswork in DS. All I'm saying is if you're 100% confident that beyond the step that I am at, these 3 steps will happen, and I'll always get the answer. These things will happen, and I'll get my answer. You should stop at that step itself. That's the beauty of data science. Okay, so if you want, you can do the math, but not required at all. So I know the ratio of the individual partner shares. I also know the total amount, so I can easily find the answer using statement 2 alone. So B is the correct answer in this particular case. Okay, guys. So with that, let's move forward to statement question number 5. Now, this is a very straightforward question on ratios. I'll not take too long to kind of go about this. So it says the ratio of men to women in a class is 6 to 5. So men to women, old ratio is 6 to 5. So I can write it as 6K and 5K. Okay. If 2 men and 1 woman drop out of the class, that means the new number of students is going to be 6K minus 2 and 5K minus 1. The ratio after the dropout is 8 is to 7. So all I know is this ratio is 8 is to 7. So if I just cross multiply, I will get 40K minus 8, or in simple terms, 2K is equal to 6 and K is equal to 3. Now, if K is equal to 3, how many men are currently in the class? So this is the number being asked. So 6 into 3 minus 2, which is 16, is my correct answer. Now, some of you in this question marked 18 as the answer also. I saw a lot of you marked C as the correct answer also, where and that's where reading the question becomes very, very important. If you don't read the question, you might calculate the value and everything correctly. But to save just those 5 seconds, you might get the answer wrong. And that's another big mistake which a lot of people do. And I always recommend that you should not try to cut corners in quant. You get the wrong question wrong at the wrong place. Like first 3 questions you make a mistake, there's no coming back almost, right? The test is just too adaptive in some cases. So you don't want to make those mistakes. Don't try to cut corners and save those 5 seconds. Read very carefully. After you've gotten the variables value, you know you can solve for anything. Just go back, just see what the question is really asking for. It is asking for how many students or men are currently in the class. So it's asking for 6K minus 2. Okay? Mark my words, this is very, very critical, guys. Don't make that blunder. Okay? Now let's go to question number 6. Now this question will solve using 2 different methods. Okay? I'll first solve using algebra and then I'll solve it using alligation. Now, just a disclaimer very quickly. In this question, the alligation method will not have a lot of advantage. You might think it's not too advantageous, but the method is important. It can actually help you a lot more in data sufficiency and DI. It can cut your question solving time to 1/3. Trust me, guys. So I'm going to show you that method. A lot of you might know that method already. But first, we'll do with algebra. Okay, let's do with algebra first. So the question says the ratio of boys and girls number count is 4 is to 3. So I can say 4K and 3K. Now the average weight of total students is 45 kgs. Okay. Now the weight of boys is girls is 7 kg less than the weight of boys, average weight. So I can say average weight is this. Now I can write my average formula, right? What average weight formula? Weighted average formula, sorry. So weighted average formula will be total weight of boys is number of boys into average weight plus total weight of girls divided by total number of students, which is 45. So if I take common x from the numerator and the denominator, I will reduce this equation to 4x plus 3x minus 21 by 7 is equal to 45. Okay, If I take x common and I cancel that, sorry, k common and I cancel the k. Okay, now it says 7x minus 21 is equal to 7 times 45. Now, unfortunately, calculator is not allowed on this part of the GMAT, but if you do the math, it will turn out to be 315. So you can write 7x as 336, from where you will get x is equal to 48 on doing the entire math. So if x is equal to 48, the number of average weight of girls will be 41, and the ratio of average weight of boys to girls will be 48:41. Okay, guys, so that is how this question will work. And there's a complete silence in the comment box. I hope all of you are able to hear me loud and clear and things are going fine. If there's any doubt, anything, please feel free to ask me in the comments. I hope my explanations are so clear that you don't have doubts, so you're not asking. And I hope everything is working fine. Okay, so that's great. Okay, so let's move forward. So this is one of the ways to solve this question, the equation method. Now, how does the allegation method really work? So the allegation method is very straightforward. And thank you, Faizan, for telling me that there is no doubt. There was complete silence. I just wanted to make sure that you can hear me. Great. So allegation method simply says that when you take the number of boys and like if you have the ratio of boys and girls, and if you have their individual averages, right? Like whatever the individual averages is, when you combine these two individual averages, the difference of this value and this value from the individual averages, like 45 from the individual averages, is in the ratio 3:4, basically. Okay, that's what the allegation method tells us. Whatever is the ratio of weights in which you are mixing two things or combining two things, the difference from individual averages to the weighted average is in the opposite ratio of that. Okay, so I know x minus 45 over x minus 7, 45 minus x minus 7 is in the ratio 3:4. Okay, again, you don't need to use this equation to kind of solve it here. Okay, just telling you that is what this means. Now I know that there's a difference of 7 between these two, right? 7, and this is 3k units away. This is 4k units away. So technically, the total distance between these two things, x and x minus 7, should be 4k and 3k. You can draw it on a number line. Think of it like this. X is over here. Sorry, x minus 7 is over here. X is over here. 45 sits somewhere in between. This distance is 3k. This distance is 4k. Okay, imagine it like this. You have to imagine it like that. So the total distance is 7k, which is equal to 7. So k is equal to 1. So if I know k is equal to 1, I can say this x is nothing but 45 plus 3k, so it is 48, and this x minus 7 is nothing but 41, like 45 minus 4 you can say. So 48:41 is your answer. Now this method generally takes some time to get used to and learn, like one of slightly let's say more logical as a method to use, and it's much faster. Like even if not for PS questions in like the quant questions in GMAT, DS questions, it can actually save you a lot of time, a lot of effort. In fact, in TPA also, two-part analysis also, some of the times they test you on the concept of weighted average. Even table questions I have seen them testing you on this. And if you know this concept of allegation, it really helps you solve questions better. So I always recommend my students that if you really want to get to 700 plus, there are some of these skills that you need to develop. Again, some of them are written on the screen, but one of the very, very important skill is using smarter logical methods to solve questions. When you use smarter logical methods to solve questions, you actually give yourself an additional advantage over other students, which can actually help you save a lot of time. You should not be trying to save time by rushing and solving questions faster. You should learn better methods which automatically help you solve questions faster as an outcome, naturally. So you are not under time pressure because you have extra time to spend on some of the questions which will be more complex than the others. That's the idea. And if you look at any of the top scorers, like in GMAT, who have scored 85 plus in Quant, anyone, you'll always find them, they also take extra time on a few questions in the test, always. Like I show some of the scorecards in my sessions a few times. And they are able to manage that because they are able to solve some questions faster. So you can do that, and word problems is one of the areas where you can easily manage it if you use numbers, if you use logical methods like allegation. And in my last quiz that I did, I think I'll just check the date. If you want to search on GMAT Club, you can search for it. I think 27th of July, which is about a couple of weeks back, I covered a method for compound interest. And again, there are so many these small these methods which can actually save you time in almost every question. Okay, so try and learn these smarter methods. At GMAT is we try to teach those to our students through the way we teach them and all. In case you want to understand more about us, our services, feel free to reach out to us. Like support@gmatquiz.com is our email ID, and at the end of the session, I'll also give you a link if you want to connect with me directly. But anyway, my more important focus here is that try to use smarter methods and some of the skills that I've written on the screen over here. Okay, let's get to question number 7 now. Now, this is what I call as a very typical GMAT style question. Okay, like this is not official question. Obviously, we are not doing any official questions, but this is very similar to what you see in data sufficiency, some of the trap questions. So let's go with this in a systematic fashion. Now, when I read this question, on a fishing expedition, a group of 13 fishermen caught a total of 160 fish. Did any one fisherman catch more than 15 fish? So what you need to understand is that the question is a yes-no type question. Okay, all we care about is that one of them, just one of them, I don't care about the remaining people, even if just one of them caught more than 15 fish, if the answer is conclusively yes to that, I can answer the question. Or if I can say for sure that none of them caught more than 15, just 15 or lesser, that's also sufficient. So yes is as good an answer to no is. So the idea in these questions is you should check the extreme case scenario also and try to see if you get the answer in one direction. So it's a yes no question, very critical to understand. Now let's go with statement 1. It says the fisherman who caught the third most fish caught 11 fish. Okay, so the third most guy, that means if I third most guy, that means there are 2 more people in front of him. This guy got 11. Now, if I look at this guy, what is the worst case that can happen? Let's assume all of them before him got 11. Every one of them, there are 13 fishermen. So 11 of them caught 11 fish each. That means 121 fish were caught by 11 people. That means there are 39 fish remaining to be caught. Now, if there are 39 fish to be caught by a couple of people, for sure, one of them has to be more than 15. Because if I even try to minimize it, I need to give one person 19. If they keep both of them as equal to each other as possible, one of them has to be 19 or 20, like that. So there is no way I can keep both of them below 15. Because if I keep both of them at 15 or below 15, it can maximum reach 30. Okay. Now this is one of the extremes, right? I'm just taking all of them below the third most to be equal to the third most. Now, it's very easy to guess now that if I take them as 10 each, right, this number 39 is only going to go up. So if it's only going to go up, it is going to only still going to keep the answer as yes, right? There has to be one person with 15 or more fish. So it gives me a conclusive answer, and that's why the statement is sufficient. And the way I did it, this is the level of depth you need to go to. You don't need to really write down equations or anything like that or overkill it. But you need to be slow. You need to be focused when you're doing this. Don't just rush into these questions. If you rush, you make a small error with yes, no questions, the entire thing goes for a toss. Don't make that mistake. Let's go to statement 2. And by the way, many of you marked statement 2 correct, did not mark statement 1 correct. Possibly did not look at this particular thing. But statement 2 gives you that second most person, the second most guy, caught 12 fish. Now, using the same logic, if all of them before him got 12 fish, 12 fish, 12 fish, all of them, there are 12 people, 12 into 12, 144 fish is gone. I still need this guy to catch 16 fish to make it 160. Correct? So this guy, the topmost guy, like who got the maximum fish, has to have 16. And 16 gives me the answer as yes. If it was 15, then the answer would be no, because it will not be more than 15. I need it to be more than 15. 16 is more than 15. So my answer is yes. And if I reduce the fish in this people, by this people, caught by this people, at all, even by a single number, this number is only going to increase further and further, further and further. So second statement alone is also sufficient. And that's why my answer to this particular question is D. Okay. So D is my answer in this particular question. I hope all of you are clear with this, guys. Okay. Very strong, very good question. Simple, yet sometimes very complex. So in this yes, no type questions, register in your mind it's a yes, no question. Think about a worst case scenario, test extremes out. Very important things to do in the test. Okay. Now, this is one of the most I would say intimidating questions that could possibly do today. And I hardly think anyone was able to solve this. As far as I remember, I'm not 100% sure. If you did solve it, great job, guys. And but yes, let's see how to solve this question. So again, there are two ways to do this. One is the mathematical way, which many of you would have done. Like if I have to mathematically express this fraction, I would have to express it like this. And I know the product is 19. Now, what do I do from here? Now, if I multiply the two, I get xy, which is complicated. Do I want to do that? No, I honestly don't want to do that. I take x on the other side, I'll still have xy. It will make it more complex. So what I thought was when I looked at this question, and this is where strategizing becomes super critical. I looked at the question, I said, okay, let me infer a few things from the question step. What can I infer? Now, one thing I know for sure is this is a proper fraction. This one and this one both, right? So the first one has to be 5 point something, correct? It can't be 6. It has to be less than 6. Now, if it has to be less than 6, can I multiply it with 2 point something? Even if it is 6, and I multiply it with 2 point something, what will happen is, if I multiply it with 2 point something, even if it is 6, very close to that, case 1, I will not get anything, but 2 point something, I will not get 18. It will be less than 18 for sure, right? Agreed? Because 6 into, even if I take 5.999 multiplied by 2.999, which is approximately 6 and 3, I don't get beyond 18, and I have to get to 90. So for sure, y is not equal to 2, not equal to 1 for that same reason, right? Can't be less than that. Can it be equal to 3? Let's check that out. So if 5 point something I multiply with 3 point something, yes, I can very well get to 90. Possible, right? Because 6 into 4, if I go with the extreme limit, 6 into 4 is 24. If I go with the bottom limit, 5 into 3 is 15. So this number has to fall in the range of 15 and 24. Okay, that is my broad range in which 19 falls. So y can be equal to 6. I'm not saying is equal to for now. It can be equal to 6. That's one of the values. Now let's take y as 4. Now if I take y as 4, no matter what I multiply with 5 point, even the smallest number I multiply, 5 into 4, I will get minimum 20. So this number has to be greater than 20. And since the question is saying is 19, this is also not possible. Not possible. Not possible. Correct? So the only case possible is y is equal to 2, 3. And I can say now for certainty that y is equal to 3. And I was like, oh God, half the battle won. At least I have some relief now. I know my y. So what I said was, okay, let me replace that in the equation. So I said, okay, let's see what happens. So I get 7 over 2. I get 90. Now, after that, I was like, okay, should I try and plug in values for x? That was one of the options. Obviously, I could have done that. But then I said, Piyush, notice, wait. You see a 7 on the top, right? You see a 7 on the top. You don't see a 7 in 19. 19 is a prime number. It doesn't have 7. So definitely, the 7 is possibly getting cancelled out from somewhere. So what will it get cancelled out with? It will get cancelled out with the denominator, right? It can't get cancelled out with 2. There's no possibility 2 can cancel that out. And I can't have a fraction multiplied with another fraction give me an integer. Most likely not, right? Again, you can come up with those scenarios. But I just said 7. Most likely this thing in the denominator is also 7. Okay, I just said, okay, that's my hunch. Let me just validate that. It could be 7, it could be 14, but it has to cancel something out. Now, in the first look itself, if x is a multiple of 7, if it is 14, then 14 plus 3, x plus y, becomes 17. And I don't see 17 in the answer, definitely. So it can't be 14. X equal to 7 is what I thought. But before I could mark the answer, I said, let me validate it. There's no harm in validating, right? Just let's do that. So I just placed 7, x equal to 7 in the equation. And I got 38 over 7 multiplied by 7 over 2. And voila, the job is done. So simple. My answer is 10. Okay, and that's what logic is about. You solve this question any other way, you'll take ages to solve this. If you are aware, and that's why I say that in the GMAT exam, awareness is super critical, guys. There could be questions which might throw you off. So you have to be very aware that, okay, when do I use my options? When should I use numbers? When should I do that? And these are things that you learn with time. Obviously, practice and all of that is important, but that awareness in the test and not giving up, that, okay, you know what? I have this complicated equations. Strategizing also is very critical. Like, that's another skill. If I multiply these two, I open the bracket, I'm gonna open a Pandora's box. I'm gonna have xy, I'm gonna have y and x, three different terms to deal with. Even if I take x on the other side, it's still gonna be a complicated expression. And there's just one expression. How do I solve two variables using one equation? No way I can do that. So in that case, you need to draw further inferences. And that's what I teach my students. Don't look at a question and just try to see what is there in front of you. Try to see what is read between the lines. You do that, things become simple. And what I taught you, you might find it a little complex if you're doing it for the first time. But just run through this. Just think about the range of the values. And this will make a lot of sense for you also. That I can easily find the value of y to be 3. And once I have y equal to 3, if you still want to solve, get the value of x, even if you're not getting to the where I got x equal to 7 as, you can still solve it, right? Then you'll have just one variable. Even if you want to solve at this stage, basically, after this stage, if you want to just solve this, okay, you can always do that, right? You don't have to like infer the way I inferred. The first inference, if you obviously infer the way I inferred, it will be easier. But even if you do the first inference right, this is solvable. You can just say 35x plus 21 is equal to 38x. And you'll get x equal to 7 from here. Very simple. Do that. I'm not saying what I did was great or that's the best way or anything like that. If it strikes, great. If it doesn't strike you, it's okay. At least now you have one variable. So you be aware about it. Like how much time I'm going to spend in this case. And that's what strategizing is also about. So awareness and strategizing. You do two things together. This helps you a lot in a lot of hard questions. Now, the other skills, I've definitely talked about them in my other sessions as well. I talked about smart logical things. But if you really want to get to that 700 plus, this is what those people do. You hear those many success stories and all those great results. Some of them don't even talk about it. But in reality, they've trained themselves to do this. Okay? So you have to learn this art. Now, let's move to question number 9 then. Okay. Now, another interesting question. There are two ways to do this. Like, obviously, you can use the variables also. So if I take, and I see the cost of renting an apartment rose by P% and buying an apartment rose by Q%. And I don't know the initial cost of the apartment. So if I don't know the initial cost of the apartment, most likely it doesn't matter. That's what my thought process was. If you want to assume it to be R and B, you can do that. But I don't see any initial cost in the answers. They're independent of that. So I'm happy assuming their initial value to be 100 each. And let them be equal. It doesn't matter. So what is the final value now? Final value will be 100 plus P, because P% of 100 is P. And this will be 100 plus P. Simple. Now it says, what is the percentage change in the ratio of the cost of renting to the cost of buying an apartment? So it's ratio, okay guys, important, very important. Some people forget this. Ratio of renting by buying. So earlier it was 100 by 100, so it was 1. Now let's see what is the ratio. So the ratio now is this. So this is the final value, this is the initial value. So what is the percentage change? It is final value minus initial value divided by initial value into 100. That's it. Now, a lot of people don't write this expression like this. I am very careful. When I see questions with answers in form of variables, that's something which a lot of people get stuck at. I always recommend them to go slow. Don't try to rush through this. Because if you make a mistake with a small minus plus anywhere, your answer will not match. So it's important to go slow in this case. Okay. So very simple. If I do this now, I will get, in the numerator, I'll get this. In the denominator, I'll have 100 plus Q and then multiplied by 100. Simple. Now what is this? 100 gets cancelled. I get P minus Q times 100 divided by 100 plus Q, which is my option D. Okay, straightforward. So in these questions where you have answers in form of variables, don't rush into solving. Do it slowly and get to an expression yourself first. Okay, never, and this is another mistake which a lot of people make, and I've seen this over my last 11 years of experience. They try to solve it halfway through and try to see which ones of the options is matching with the answer, and then they try to kind of guess their way out. I don't recommend that. I would say focus on what is in front of you. You can look at the options. There's no harm in taking a clue from it, but don't try to prematurely guess things. That's a bad thing. I would say yes, get a look at it, maybe to understand in what form you need to bring it to, but rely more on solving part properly, okay, with variables. And now some of you might assume P and Q as numbers, 10%, 20%, like, sorry, in this case, P is I think greater than Q. So you have to do 20%, 10%. You can do that also, but then you'll have to plug those values in every option. Do I recommend doing that? Honestly, no. In these questions, I don't see the benefit. You have to do cost benefit analysis. So when to pick numbers, when not to pick numbers is a very important trick to also learn, and another thought process to also develop. And you have to always do cost benefit analysis to do that. Can you do it in the test day? Not really. Basically, you can't really do it in the test day like the cost benefit analysis. You have to do it, but you can't solve it both ways and calculate that. You have to do it in a practice also. Try to think, okay, should I do using numbers? Should I use variables? In such cases, when the answer is in variables, more or less 99% cases, it doesn't make sense to kind of use numbers. But yes, if it is not, it does. But that's definitely put in that effort during your practice phase, and then learn from an expert maybe who can help you understand in which cases you can do what. Obviously, as and when I see things, I am going to teach you like whatever sessions I am going to take. But yes, try and learn that skill in your practice phase as well. Okay. So Faizan says, I've solved this question so many times and remembered the answer. Okay, as Faizan happens, yes, yeah, this is on GMAT Club, so a lot of people end up solving a lot many times similar question. But yes, definitely a pretty good question, very similar to what you get on some of the hard questions in the GMAT, especially with variables. Okay, now let's look at this one. Now this question, this is the maximum minima question based on sets, right? Now there are multiple ways to do this. One option is you can take a Venn diagram, draw all of, try to maximize and minimize each part. Like some of you just picked E as the answer, saying, okay, 30 is the lowest of the numbers, so it can be maximum that much and whatnot. But let me tell you the right method, best method to do this. So some of you might not know this equation, so I'm going to tell you those equations first. So basically, when you have a 3 overlapping set Venn diagram, right? And again, disclaimer, we teach this in detail in our coursework, but right now I don't have the bandwidth to teach in detail. I'm going to run through a slide at a slightly faster pace, but please try to bear with me. This is the best way. There are multiple equations to consider 3 overlapping sets, but we feel after all our research that these 2 equations actually make the maximum sense to use. If you get adapted to it, it might take like 2-3 hours to get adapted to it. It will actually make your life very easy after that. So the equations are very simple. If you name these 3 sets A, B, and C, the first equation I can always write is even, sorry guys, just give me 1 second. I have some water, just 1 second. Sorry, thanks for bearing with me. E1 plus E2 plus E3 plus N. N is the value that lies outside of all the sets, is equal to total. Now, what is even? Even are values that belong to exactly one set. So if I have to color code, that's what even is. Okay, I'll just write it everything in color coded fashion. Okay, that will just make it easier for you guys to understand. E2, on the other hand, is entities that belong to 2 sets. Okay, and E3 is basically entity that belongs to all 3 sets. Okay, so these are 2 equations that you can always write. All right, guys. So you can always write these equations in case of any 3 overlapping set Venn diagram. That's first equation. The second equation that you can write is E1 plus 2E2 plus 3E3 is equal to the sum of the values of the 3 sets combined. Okay. Take a note of these 2 equations, guys. I'm going to rub them in 1 minute. So take a note of these 3 equations, and the proof of this obviously can be shown. But as I said, I'm not here to teach sets, so I'm not going to teach that. But you can yourself sit and write A, B, C, D, all of that, small A, B, C, D, and you'll get the proof of it easily. So these are 2 equations which can help you solve, especially maxima minima question of sets very fast, and other questions also pretty quickly. It has to be adopted, obviously, properly. There are certain variations that we teach students to look at, not of the equations, but the questions that GMAT tested. These equations, if you apply, it always leads you to the result in the fastest possible way. But you have to get used to that. Okay. So with that clear, let's now focus on solving this question. So I'll remove this Venn diagram. Now I'll just write down these equations for this particular question. So this question says that E1 plus E2 plus E3 is equal to 50. Okay, because an athlete has to pass the test by these three agencies, and all athletes pass the test by at least one agency, so n is equal to 0. And I also know that E1 plus 2E2 plus 3E3, if I look at the second equation, it is equal to 40 plus 35 plus 30, which is the values of the three sets. So if I add them, I get 105. Okay, so that is what my second equation is going to be. Now, if I subtract these two equations to get rid of E1, I get E2 plus 2E3 is equal to 55. Okay, now the question is asking me who might, and let me name this equations as 1, equation 2, and this is the derived equation 3. Now it says, what is the lowest and highest number of people who have passed all three agencies? So I have to look at the minimum and maximum value of E3. Okay. Now let me start with the maximum value first. Why? Let me come to that later. It's just sake of explanation becoming easier. So if I look at maximizing E3, I look at this equation 3 over here. You can very clearly see that I can, if I try and equate all the 55 values to 2E3, I can maximum give E3 to 27 values to E3, because 27 into 2 will be 54 and plus 1 will give me 55. So I have to satisfy this equation. And since we are talking about number of people, number of athletes, it can't be fractional. If it was not number of athletes, it was fraction of athletes, percentage of athletes. I could even make it 27.5. So I have 27 as the maximum value possible. Okay. Now those of you who are smart, who have understood my awareness skill, would know that D is my answer, because that's what maximum value is, right? 27 with certainty. So I don't even need to check the minimum in this case. I can be peaceful. I have my answer. I'll mark, move ahead. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, but yes, obviously my task is to teach you this as well. So I'll teach you how to solve the minimum. Okay, but did you understand how to solve the maximum? Okay, Nivedita, how do you get the second equation as 105? So second equation is sum of ABC. Okay, ABC are the three sets. So if you notice, ABC are the three sets. So number of people who are passed tested by the first agency 40, second agency 35, third agency 30. So these three sets, A plus B plus C, the sum of these three, 40 plus 35 plus 30 is 105. Okay. And again, Nivedita, sorry, pardon me for this, but I can't go too deep into this. We have covered this in our coursework in depth, but yeah, since it is not a sets class, it's not a theory-based class, I'm not going too deep. But just try to focus on these equations. The way I made the Venn diagram with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you will be able to understand that yourself. Don't worry. So 105 is the sum of the values of the three sets, which is E1 plus 2E2 plus 3E3. Okay. And in simple terms, just to explain, I want to explain a little more. So if you add all three sets, the areas that belong to exactly one set is only counted once. But areas that belong to exactly two sets will be counted in two sets. So it will be counted twice. And the areas that belong to three sets will be counted thrice. So if you write in form of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you will understand how this equation works. Okay, Nivedita, and apologies for not being able to spend more time on this. But anyway, I have these two equations and then I just maximize my E3, 27. Now I want to minimize E3. Now I can stick with the same equation and I can say, okay, what if I want to minimize E3? And let me actually go to the next page of the equation. Okay, I'll just write down the equations on this page once again, just for the sake of clarity. So E1 plus E2 plus E3 is equal to 50. E1 plus 2E2 plus 3E3 is equal to 105. So this was my first equation. This was my second equation. And I subtracted the two to get my third equation, which is this one. Now, if I want to minimize, basically, that value of E3 I want to minimize, can I make it 0? Obviously, I'll try my best to make it 0. If I try and make it 0, E2 becomes 55. Now, is that a problem? Not really for equation 3. But the problem is with equation 1. If you look at equation 1, E2 becomes 55, the others have to be negative, which is just not possible. So I have to choose values of E2 and E3 such that they add up to 50, but when I multiply 2 with E3, that adds up to 55. That's the trap. That's the trick over here. How do I choose values of E3? Now you can pick E3 as 1 and see what happens to E2. Then E2 becomes 53, and you can keep doing this. You can keep doing this, and you'll come to a point where you realize that E3 is equal to 5. But is that the best thing to do? Not really. It's like, again, nothing strikes. You can do this, but the best way to look at it is that what is happening. My limiting factor is that I don't have enough meat in 50 to support the value of E2. But in every case, if you notice, I'm trying to get E1 as 0 because I'm trying to distribute all the values, give as much values to E2 as possible so that it can eat up a lot of values. Like you'll understand that if you look at the second equation. So what I will do is I'll equate E1 to 0. So if I equate E1 to 0 and I'm going to erase things over here, okay, guys, then this is where my equation will translate, equation 1 and equation 2. So I'm going to remove equation 3 now. I'll simply solve these two equations in a slightly different way. I'll just multiply the first equation by 2. Okay, so what I get is this is 100, and I subtract both of them, then I get E3 as 5. And that's what my answer is. That's what my lowest value possible is. Okay, guys. So that's how you can minimize E3. So the main thing is that if you try to minimize E3 and give every value and make it 0 using the third equation that we had in the previous slide here, E2 will become 55, which the first equation will not support. So either you can keep reducing E2 a little, and check where do you kind of get to a place where the first equation is satisfied. Either you can keep doing that manually, or the other thing you can do is you notice that E1 is what we are getting to 0 eventually. That's what your observation has to be. So if you notice that E1 is what we are making to 0 eventually, then you just equate E1 to 0, get it out of the picture. Then you have just two equations, two variables to solve, and voila, the answer is right there with you. And as I said, you don't need to do any of it. If you're aware, if you're smart, you get 27 as the value of the largest value possible of E3, you can just mark it. But is this question something you can do in the first go without knowing this process with 100% confident? Possibly no. Like it is something which will take you some time to get used. This is a really deep concept, a tough question, tough application of it. But I hope it helps you understand how simple can you make a question by using something so logical. Okay. Can you repeat the first step? I'm not sure, Faizan, which first step are you talking about? But if you're talking about E1 being 0, my idea is that since if I try to minimize E3 in my third equation on the screen, and I want to make E3 0, then E2 has to be 55, which doesn't fit in this equation. So I have to fit it in this equation somehow. And to fit in, either I can reduce the value of E2 to 50. If I reduce the value of E2 to 50, then this equation will still not work because 50 plus 0 will not give me 55. So I can either do hit and trial and check where I get satisfied with 1 and 3, or I can understand logically that in every case, I'm not assigning any value to E1. I'm just distributing values between E2 and E3. And there is a reason for that as well. So I'm making E1 as 0. If I do E1 as 0, then my two equations reduce to this, and I'm just multiplying the first equation by 2. So I get 2E2 plus 2E3 equal to 50 into 200. And I subtract the 2, I get E3. This 2 I'm subtracting there, and I get E3 is equal to 5. I don't get E3 is equal to 3. It's fine. Okay, guys. So I hope all of you are able to make sense of this. The last one is a tough concept, as I said. It takes a little more getting used to. There is a decent amount of work which is needed generally before I teach this to my students. But in case you want to understand how we can help you get your GMAT score to the grade level you want to, we have done a great 100% effort. We put a 100% effort to understand how the test is really testing and the key skill gaps that a student has to help them improve their score. Then feel free to reach out to me on this details. This is our email ID and everything. And I'm also sharing the link to connect, schedule a call on my calendar. We have helped a lot of students with our private tutoring classes where you can directly get to work with me. And we also offer a self-paced course where a lot of these great methods are also taught. But yes, that's what our specialty is. So in case you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me on these details, and I have shared the link to schedule up on my calendar as well. But I hope you guys are able to get some great lessons into how you can be logical, how those skills that you need to develop can help you solve questions better. Okay, so it was great interacting with all of you, and all the best for your GMAT. The round one is close, so I hope all of you do really, really well. Okay. Michael, I can definitely do that, but as I said, this will elongate the discussion. You can check out this concept in our video lessons on GMAT. It is definitely there, or you can just go back, watch the recording, that part, and draw the Venn diagram and try to do this yourself. Thank you so much, and sorry, Michael, I'm not able to do that. But you know, so, thank you.